man can place a value on a woman. No man. The woman's value comes from a relationship with Christ and with the way God sees her. So women should never let a man place value on you. A man cannot determine if you're high value or not. Never will. A man will never determine if you're high value or not. So last Sunday on Mother's Day, Pastor Jamal Bryant of New Birth down in Atlanta gave a Mother's Day sermon. And he was talking about how women are valuable and the value of women. He was talking about women. And he threw some shade at Kevin Samuels. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kevin Samuels was the YouTuber that was prevalent in the manosphere, who recently passed away last week, unfortunately, and tragically and mysteriously. So when Kevin Samuels was on his show talking about women, he would usually talk about their value and those kind of things. So when people heard Jamal Bryant's message last week, when he talked about you cannot let a man who has no authority essentially tell you what you're worth. So here's what Jamal Bryant said.
The text that narrow-minded churches quote to keep women silent is 1 Corinthians chapter 14, asking women to be silent. And when they quote it, they are quoting it out of context. Because hear this, Paul is not asking women to be silent about prayer. He's not asking them to be silent about prophecy. He is asking them to be silent, hear this, in the interpretation of the prophecy. Because according to biblical principle, when there is a prophet, then there's got to be somebody to confirm the prophecy. Paul is heavy on headship. And so he understood that women have the gift of prophecy, but he was in fact putting a short gap in place in the event that the woman of God is married to a man of God. Y'all ain't ready for me in here, because Paul did not want the woman to check the man. Y'all ain't ready for this kind of preacher. Paul made the controversial statement for insecure preachers to be okay. And then you all are quoting that a woman ought to submit. She ain't supposed to submit to any man. She's supposed to submit to a man who is submitted under God. If he ain't submitted, don't you buck your knee. You better stand right there until you find a man. You are listening to men who have no authority. How can a man say that you are of low value after 35? How can a man say that you do not have the level of traction of a high-powered man when that man has got to get a GoFundMe for his funeral?
So when Paul talked about how women should stay silent in the church, that was in reference to keeping order in the church, because there were busybodies at that time who would keep up a lot of gossip, a lot of backbiting. I mean, First Peter talks about that, how there are women who are busybodying, who are always in other people's business and things like that, to stay away from those people, the busybodies. And so that's what Paul was referencing. It was not in reference to insecure men or insecure pastors. So Jamal Bryant's message, while had some biblical truths to it, I believe the application of it and delivery of it was a little bit off. And here's why I say that. Because yes, a man should be the head of a woman. That's biblically sound. In God's idea of a biblical marriage, when God created the institution of marriage, he made Adam first. And then he created and formed Eve out of Adam. So the male and female are actually one. And that's why the Bible talks about when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. And the Bible talks about the man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. See, because they are one flesh. Because Eve came from Adam and not the other way around. And when God refers to mankind, he refers to mankind, meaning that they're all one. Different bodies, but you're all one in the eyes of God. And so that's the way God envisions marriage. He envisions the man, a godly man with a godly wife, and then children underneath that. But there's oneness between the husband and the wife. However, I agree with Jamal Bryant in the sense that the man has to be a godly man. A woman should not submit to just any man. Why would a woman submit to a man that's going to harm them? Why would a woman submit to a man that does not have their best interest in heart? A godly man, a man that is following Jesus, will always have the best interest of his wife in the forefront, in his heart. He will always have the best interest of his family in the forefront, in his heart. Why? Because that person is submitted to God. A godly man is in submission. See, all this talk about women submit. And there's no reference to, first, the man has to submit. The man submits to God, submits to Jesus' headship, and then the woman submits to the man, and the children submit to the mother and the father. That's the ideal family structure. And that is what the left is, the Marxists, the Black Lives Matter, the feminists, LGBTQIA. That is what they're attacking. And unfortunately, the black church has perpetrated the matriarchy, which places the woman here and kicks the man totally out of the picture. And see, that's why I wish a lot of pastors and Jamal Bryant would have spoken to. Now, while I disagree with a lot of the ways and the things that Kevin Samuel said, I disagree with that because he was coming from a worldly perspective. No man can place a value on a woman. No man. The woman's value comes from a relationship with Christ and the way God sees her. So women should never let a man place value on you. A man cannot determine if you're high value or not. Never will. A man will never determine if you're high value or not. Now, he may think that, but a woman should never let a man determine your worth. Your worth is based upon your relationship with Jesus Christ, based upon your creator. He determines your worth because he was the one that created you. Nevertheless, a woman should value herself enough to not submit to a man that is not, number one, submitted to God. Because in all honesty, that man will never know how to love you properly. Because he is not submitted to the one who is the foundation of love, the one who is love, the one who sent his son out of love. So that person will never know how to love you the way God loves you. And a godly man may not have it all together at the beginning, but he's pursuing that. And as he pursues God, he'll grow and grow and grow. And that's the kind of man that a godly woman should submit to. A godly woman should not submit to a man that's not following God. And a lot of women need to understand this. You must see, the Bible talks about when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. A lot of women are not ready to be wives. They don't have the mindset. They're not ready to humble themselves and understand the structure and the order the way God designed it. That's the only way our communities will flourish. That's the only way our communities can be restored. We have bought into this feminist, this Marxist, this communist ideology that a woman is just as good as a man and can do everything a man can do, and she doesn't need a man. She can go have a career. She can do this and do that without understanding that leads to destruction. That really leads to destruction, and it causes victimization. You want to know why it causes victimization? Because the woman feels empowered, the woman emasculates the man, and the man feels victimized. And then the woman realizes that everything she's been acquiring, when deep down she wants to have a relationship with a man, wants to be married, she realizes that emptiness on the inside. And so she's become a victim, and the man has become a victim. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. But we must realize that we have to do it God's way, the biblical way. That's the only way it will be successful. Too many people are trying to do it outside of the will of God, outside of God's structure. That's why we have so many issues in our communities. That's why we have so many issues in this nation. As the nation becomes more and more secular, as the culture becomes more and more secular, then our norms, then our families and our communities become more and more destroyed. They become more and more destroyed. They become more and more separated. They become more and more denigrated to the point to where they are now diminishing and ultimately will be disintegrating. We are not victims. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. So Jamal Bryant, while I definitely disagree with him throwing shade at a person that's no longer here in this physical form, and while I disagree with a lot of the methods and the methodology and the way that Kevin Samuel addressed the women, the message that Jamal Bryant preached last Sunday, at the core of it, was biblically based. We have to get back to God's structure. A godly man, a man that's following God, following Jesus, submitted unto God, unto Jesus. A woman, a godly woman, following God, submitted to God, but then submitted to the man and then the children. That's the way it works. That's the way it's going to have to work. You want to know why our families were flourishing back in the 20s and the 30s when there was true segregation and true oppression? Because they had the proper structure. God could bless that. God's not going to bless this mess that we've created because it's out of his will. Period. We must get back to his will. We are not victims. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. Thank you so much for liking your comments and subscribing to the channel. Please share this with your friends. Smash that like button. Smash the subscription bell. Share this with everybody you know. We're trying to make sure people understand that they're not victims, that they are empowered for greatness, and all this stuff that's out here that's telling them otherwise is false and will not benefit them in the end. So please, I appreciate that. Share that.